Okay. Hey, welcome to the We Were There podcast. My special guest today is Anthony Vivaldi of Coastal Horizons, as well as Save a Vet Now. My name is Brian, and it's football season, so you know how to represent. Tony, you got a team out there?
Yeah, Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, okay. Well, I just want to get things started here and just ask you a little bit about yourself, your intro, background. So, who are you?
So I'm an Air Force veteran. I did 2 tours in the Air Force. I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Vietnam.
And post-military service. In my old age, in my retirement, I started a program called Save a Vet Now, which deals with veteran suicide. I am partnered with Coastal Horizons in Wilmington to provide mental health care to our local veterans and their families with no out-of-pocket cost to them. The distinction between Save a Vet Now and Coastal Horizons is we are a conduit for the veterans to get the help they need, and Coastal Horizons is the organization that provides that help.
Okay. Thank you. I'm excited about the interview myself because I've been, you're a longtime mentor of mine, and this is a privilege for me. So don't ever think it's not. This is good stuff for me. I love it. So let's talk about back in the day when you served. Is there anything about your service that created conflict? Negative experiences you had? Your service transitioning back out of war to home?
Yeah. So our return from wartime in those days, a lot different than the modern day veteran.
For sure.
So we were going through a strong anti-government movement back then, anti-establishment movement. There was a lot of protest regarding the war in Vietnam.
Right.
So veterans from Vietnam faced backlash when they came home. There were no welcoming parties. Just a quick story about my first experience. Excited to be back in the United States. I get in a cab, and the driver asked me, he said, "Where are you coming from?" I said, "I'm just coming back from Vietnam." And he reached back and closed the window between us and never spoke to me again.
Wow. I don't think that's something that any of the GWAT, like my generation, I don't think we experienced any of that at all. I think the reputation of veterans is definitely gotten a lot better. That time period of with you guys coming back and baby killers and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
it was, I do remember some of that, and definitely from like just reading about it and stuff.
So I think we can go a step further for returning veterans in the modern era, post 9/11. We seem to get in this thing about thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
That to me just doesn't say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we need to take a further step than that, but it still is much better today than it was back then.
Well, for sure, yeah. Well, me and in my circle, we always have an issue with what do I say to that? You know, how do we respond to? Okay, I think General Mattis, he was the one that said, "You were worth it." That's what he used to say. I think that was him. It was one of the GOs that was out there and say that's what I say when people say thanks for your service. It's like, you were worth it.
Well, it's well intentioned.
It is. Definitely.
Let's make light of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is well intentioned.
The intention is definitely a positive one.
Yeah.
But because I think most people generally don't know what to say to us.
Yeah.
You know, when they come across a veteran, just like, thank you. You know, like, okay. And I think that there's a growing. I'm not trying to get into that lane of politics and you know, the disgruntled service members out there about, you know, how we closed down Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You know, purpose of Iraq. Why are we in Iraq? And those kind of things. I think what I think is refreshing is that, at least when it comes to veterans, they've been able to separate the politics from the people.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that was a thing when you guys back in the Vietnam era were doing your thing.
It was all lumped together.
Yeah. And you got to think about the time frame too. A lot was going on. You had just rotated out of the 60s, which were, you know, assassination, horrible stuff going on in the world. And yeah, so it was just tough time.
Interesting times.
Yeah.
Interesting times.
I'm gonna change it up a little bit and hopefully lighten it up a little bit too. But retirement versus just a regular transition of somebody who just does like 3 years, 4 years, 6, 7 years, and the ETSs ends their tour service.
So we're talking about transition into civilian life.
Right. Have you noticed if there's a difference between the retiree and the, you know, 3 years, 4 years, I did my job, I got out, I went back to school?
So let's look at this from both sides. So if you're an officer, done well, maybe you've gone into the upper ranks, you're coming out with a good financial background. You don't have to worry about finances. Generally, you've been in charge of lots of people, so you bring a lot of skill with you.
Definitely.
So you would think it'd be an easy transition for those who spent more time and reached some of the higher ranks. But in my experience, I find that's not true. I don't care what rank you are, how long you've been in, how old you are, making that transition to a brand spanking new culture is not a slam dunk.
Yeah,
it can be very difficult.
I think a lot of it's taken for granted. I think we're just starting to get, I think one of the conferences we went to, I believe in Lejeune, they're doing like a longer transition period for the units. There's like an actual person, a commander of a transition unit. I gotta say that's a lot better than what I had. I had about a week and a half.
It seems to be a common complaint today that they're not adequately prepared.
Right.
Someone on my crew in Save a Vet Now has told me that his response to that was the people who are putting the programs together to prepare these veterans to come out have never made the transition themselves. They're career military.
Yeah.
So they have no clue
No
of
point
what
of
these
reference.
veterans are going to face. I had, when I first put Save a Vet Now together, I had a full colonel come in to be part of the staff. And he was as lost in transition as a young corporal getting out and
I can
only
see that.
done 4 to 6 years. What am I going to do with the rest of my life?
I can see that.
So if we talk about the retired or the officers, not much difference. On the enlisted side, and those who've done a short stint, maybe 1 or 2 tours, now that can be even more difficult. So let's say you were a tank driver for 6 years, 8 years. Now you come out, there aren't very many tank driving jobs
Correct.
in our area.
Yeah.
And if you were a sniper, even worse. I mean, you know, good Lord, let's hope there are no job opportunities.
Or you
for that.
stay on the contracting side.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I find too, because having worked with some of those guys, it's like they get out and it's like they continue to be in and just in, whereas being closed working for a private contractor.
So military police, easy transition because that's why you see so many first responders that are former military, because it's an easy transition for one to be a pilot. If you were a pilot in the Air Force, it'd be an easy transition.
For sure. So, all right. Well, I'd like to lighten it up, like I said I was going to do. And what things have you noticed that make vets successful?
Pardon me.
What have you noticed that makes veterans successful after, their tour in the military?
So I find veterans to be very, very resilient. They rely on their training, their experience. They have experiences that many people who don't go in the military never are faced with. So they're good leaders. They are good problem solvers, and they are adaptable.
Definitely. I did all that. It's funny because you sit here and listen, talking about that, and I just think about like all the things when you sit around and talk about what your attributes are, you know, because I had a problem when I got out of like, what do I put on my resume? How do I narrow this thing down? You know, because many people may not have a problem that I had, but I had a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And
And I also had a lot of stuff that I needed to translate into civilian speak, which was kind of tough too. Not everybody has to do that particularly, or as much information to kind of narrow it down for people to be able to absorb. But I think that's part of the problem too. It's like each soldier, soldier, sailor, Marine, you get out and there's a bunch of stuff that like the tangibles, if you will. Like, you know, you're an infantryman, but you're also a squad leader.
Yeah.
You're also a platoon sergeant. You're also the key and lock custodian guy. You're also the operations security guy. You know, the nuclear biological or CBIRD, nuclear biological chemical guy. Additional duties.
I'm particularly impressed with those who come out and decide to go to college. And I think they now bring a maturity to being a student.
Yeah.
And they get more out of that because of all their
Right.
world experiences. And so now they have the resilience and the adaptability to change course, you know?
I think my brother was a good example when he went in the military and he got out his little 3 or 4 years, came back, got out, went to college, and he was never a student.
Yeah.
You know, but when he got from what he experienced in the military to like, you just want me to read some pages, man, and what? Okay, gotcha. And you know, and not with all the overbearing stuff on you, and you already get this sense of like urgency, and sometimes that's a problem. But when we're talking just in relation to going back to school, oh, that sense of urgency, that anxiety that you got, I'm late, oh my God, it comes in handy. You know, it's like I can get this paper done. You know, and your time management. You know, those are commodities that you just can't. You have to teach that stuff to people. Like, you know, I mentor youngsters around the community, and time management is not a thing. It's like, I'll get it done. Well, when?
Yeah.
You know, and what's your schedule? What's the?
So that's, we may talk about this later, but that's an issue with the transition from military to civilian life. The work ethic, military work ethic is completely different than the civilian work ethic. If I'm given a task, I'm gonna work this task until it's done.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as picking up at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I used to explain it this way. I said, you know what? I said, I don't know if you know me or not. I said, but I will die on the steps of Valhalla, pushing the Valkyrie away to get my stuff done. I got stuff to do, you know. And of course, you know, depending on where you serve, you know, that the sense of urgency is like lives are on the line.
But that's what makes good students. When these kids go to college, they have that work ethic, and they become really good students, and that helps them with their transition.
Absolutely. I've seen that a lot where like dudes that are, before they went, and they were like, I ain't going to college, and then they go to the military, and it's like, I'm gonna knock this college thing out because that was not for me, and this is easy compared to that, right? So yeah. How do you coach them through that finding new meaning?
So that's a difficult task. So we all need a sense of self-purpose. We need to belong to something bigger than ourselves. So now they've come from what they consider a career, whether it was only 4 years or 8 years, whatever it might have been. And now they're saying, geez, what is my purpose in life here? What am I going to do? So I think tribe is essential to this, and let me explain where I'm coming from with this. So when we're in the military, we have our own built-in tribe. We have a support structure like no other, and that support structure helps every veteran, service member succeed. I mean, we lived in the biggest gated community you could ever imagine. You know, everything was taken out. Finances were taken care of for us. Our medical was taken care of for us, and we always had that tribe, that support structure. So now you get out of the service, and there goes your tribe. There goes your support structure. You don't have that anymore. So I think veterans are looking for new meaning. They have to find a way to connect with other veterans. There are those of us who are out here, we're here to help with whatever you need. We're never going to make the connection that they're going to make with another veteran who's been there, done that, knows what they're talking about, and can empathize, just not sympathize with what their problems are.
Yeah. That's one of the things we're talking about in some of the other veteran organizations that I'm in is mentorship programs. You know, the ones for people that just transitioned out, just retired. You know, especially for retirees. I mean, if you're like for people that did 20 plus, that's a serious amount of transitioning. And people I think make the assumption just because you're of a higher rank or something that you've got this thing figured out, and that ain't it. That is not it. And you probably have stories about that, but I know I've seen it.
We should make one more point about this too. I think it's not that veterans coming out of the military are looking for handouts. I mean, everybody's there to provide something.
Yeah.
What they need is a helping hand up. They can do this on their own. They just might need a helping hand up.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of time sitting around trying to figure out what it is, how we can reach them. From the Cape Fear Veteran Resilience Project, we sit around, pondering that question. What more can we do to where it's like we are not able to go to people's houses and drag them out, but it's like we also want to get the word out there too. And
so the downside of this, and not to make this negative, but an issue that veterans are faced with is the stigma against mental health. So
we're going to definitely talk about that a little bit later.
So when they get faced with this, they're afraid of being labeled or whatever, so it holds them back a little.
Yeah, that's a tough topic. Like I said, we're gonna talk about that in a few minutes. We're gonna take a quick break here though, and we'll be back.